Mondays is for Motivation Monday. And every Monday we bring you stories of people who have overcome, people who are doing something to bring about change in the community. And today I have a story for you. You know, when you think back at your life growing up, are there some decisions that you made that are bad, that you're still having to contend with the consequences of that? You know, today I have a story for you on overcoming the consequences of bad decisions. We all have those decisions we made. Maybe in our teenagehood, in high school. I keep thinking if I was to go back to high school, I'd be an A student. I wasted so much time in high school. I know Mr. and Mrs. Okumu are watching. You know, I wasted so much time in high school. If I was to be honest with myself, I focused on the things I shouldn't have focused on. I nearly made the same mistake in college. And so I look back and I think, if I was to do it again, I'll probably do a few things slightly differently. But you know what? We can still overcome the consequences of some of these bad decisions. And today's story will be able to bring that out for you. Right now, I want us to take a look at the local dailies, find out what's making headlines today. But before we do that, I want to remind you, Eden Tea, finest garden tea. If you haven't tried it, please try it. Available at the supermarkets at affordable prices. Comes to you in several flavors: Eden green tea, Eden purple tea, Eden lemon tea, Eden ginger tea, and Eden premium tea. Eden tea reminding you and I to continue to work together, to be vigilant, putting on our face masks, washing our hands with soap and running water, maintaining interpersonal distance. Why? Because Eden tea cares for you and Eden tea cares for me. Eden tea is packed at the source. That, my friend, ensures consistency in the color, in the aroma, in the taste. Every tea bag is excellently the same. And so try it out. You will not regret it. Once again, available at supermarkets at affordable prices. Daily Nation, Ruto molds in Uhuru cabinet. Says President Kenyatta is presiding over a cabinet with divided loyalties amid reports that some members are only biding their time before they openly support Deputy President William Ruto's presidential campaign. The DP has himself said he has had secret meetings with CSs sympathetic to his political cause. That's the big story there. There's a picture there that says 2022 succession, Mount Kenya defiant. The emergence of two factions, Mount Kenya East and West, has polarized leaders within President's camp, with the divisions likely to weaken their offensive against Deputy President William Ruto. Read that story. It is right there. Also, Form 1 selection results expected to be out, Roshio, tomorrow. The long wait for incoming Form 1 learners and their families to know the secondary school they have been admitted to will come to an end tomorrow when the selection results will be released. The CS has assured that all the 1.18 million candidates who start KCPE will be placed in secondary schools. Other stories making headlines in the local dailies today. Page 3, under-resourced search and rescue divers becoming legends in the South Rift. They have helped in searches and body retrieval in several counties in Nyanza and Rift Valley. There's a picture of them there. You can read their story on page 3 of the Daily Nation newspaper today. There's quite a bit on politics, but there's something here on page 9. Fresh controversy over appointment of judges. Maraga, Mutunga, and ex-JSC vice chair says nominees list was altered. What does that mean? You need to read that article to find out what that is all about. And then on something on agriculture here on page 10 and 11, inside new plans to rescue coffee sector, make growing it profitable. I remember back in the day when I was in primary school, and, we would learn about our cash crops. There was coffee and tea and pyrethrum. They were big. I don't know what happened. Also on page 11, Mira farmers' wars intensify. Besides lack of market, farmers are also incurring losses since twigs must be harvested. Center pages from around the world on page 19. Malawi making strides in protecting albinos. Individuals, the government, and NGOs working together to offer protection. It says in Malawi, children with albinism face a lot of challenges, including discrimination, attacks, and ritual killings. Oh my goodness, that is just sad. Center pages of the newspaper today, the pull-out junior sport. It's all about timeless beauty. Swafia 9 aspires to make the world more beautiful one plant at a time. You can read her inspiring story right there in the junior sport pullout for today. And then going on to the back pages of the local dailies in sports, we have Kenya wins T20 title in Rwanda. National women's team overcome favorites Namibia in Kwibuka tournament. You can check out their story right there. And then also there's something on motorsport and also UEFA Euro 2020. England Starling sinks Croatia. Medics say Ericsson suffered cardiac arrest. And then back home, it's rivals Gore AFC in final. It's the FKF Betway Cup. Back page, Daily Nation today from one selection results to be released tomorrow. That whole story is carried there. And then Varsity Dawn criticizes plans to scrape degree program. Those, my friend, are some of the key stories you will find in the local dailies today. Grab yourself a copy, keep yourself informed on what's happening both locally and also international. Remember, the next short while, it's all about overcoming the consequences of bad decisions on Motivation Monday. Grab some Eden tea, the finest garden tea. On Motivation Monday this morning, we are focusing on overcoming the consequences of bad decisions. I've got an amazing guest for us today. This one boy is telling me for sure we did a lot of mistakes when we were growing up, but we have to take it positively because through those mistakes, those mistakes have become the greatest teachers in life. I do agree with that. You know, we look back and we have learned quite a bit from some of the mistakes we made when we were younger. This morning, I'm so glad to be joined by Sylvia Muthoni. Sylvia, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Pastor James.
Karibu sana, it's good to have you on the show, finally.
Asante, thank you so much.
Awesome. So you have an amazing story. Take us to the beginning. You know, how was life for you growing up? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, thank you so much again, Pastor James. Well, for me, I grew up. I grew up in a family of just my two parents and my siblings. I have a sister and a brother, and I can say we grew up pretty well. And we were brought up well, Christian background. And we didn't have, much struggle when we were growing up. At least my parents were blessed. And so I grew up, I can say, pretty well. I thank God.
Okay. You said you have siblings. Are you the firstborn? Are you a middle child? When your last body?
Me and your firstborn. Your first.
Okay. So tell us a bit about your life. How was life growing up, school and everything? We want to hear your story. We want to learn from you.
Okay, thank you so much, Pastor James. Well, for me, I grew up, I can say my earlier childhood, I was brought up in South B. And that's where we grew up. And I went to school, Loreto Convent Valley Road.
Yes.
Girls' school. And that's where I went to primary school. And then after that, I went to high school, Brook House. And it was good. After Brook House, I went to Agastana, where I did.
Where is Agastana? Yes, the is here.
Those days, Agastana University. What?
I've never heard of Agastana. Okay.
Yes.
What were you pursuing at Agastana?
International relations. Yes. And so I can say from there is when I began to, having been in primary school, a girls' school, not much. But then when I went into high school, the culture shock, now you go here and it's an international school. So there are people from every country and you're looking at how the school is and that culture shock.
Yeah.
So that's where I started becoming, I'm seeing and I'm like, oh, so this is what life is about, and because of being in a girls' school, we never used to interact with boys and things like that. So that's my background basically. And my parents were pretty strict, especially my father. So I grew up, in that kind of background. So when I went to high school, that's when, like the culture shock and I began to see, how people interact. And that's where for me, I can say, life, basically from that point, I began to, to take a different turn from the way that I was brought up.
When you say a different turn, what exactly do you mean?
After high school, after high school, trying to, maybe trying to fit in and experiment with other people. You can see how people are interacting, and I was really trying. I think I was really trying, going overboard to try and fit in. You get?
Yeah.
So I think for me, when I look back at my life, that's where I see I took a different turn, and then I didn't have in my mind a vision of who I wanted to become. You know what the Bible says, without the vision, the people perish.
Very true.
And for me, I didn't understand who I was, at that point in time, the decisions. I look back now and I see that those are some of the things that began to make, I made certain decisions in my life that I had to face the consequences much later.
Okay. Would you say that being part of a school that had international students, different cultures, different way of life, would you say that was one of the things that affected you beginning to look at things differently?
Yes, I believe so, totally. Because when, having been in the girls' school, and when you get to high school, you see people are interacting with, with boys differently, and people don't have issues with, things like drinking and things like that. Even if at that time I didn't engage in it, but it showed me another different picture of what I knew. Because for me, I can tell you, my parents brought us up in the church.
Yeah.
We were always in the church. And, like you go to those days, you go to church from morning to evening.
Yes. Yes.
And, if your mom is serving or your parent is serving, you're serving with them there. And so now going into this, new culture, I think for me, with students from Uganda, Tanzania, and, all this, that's where for me, I believe that I started thinking of taking a different, direction and making decisions differently.
Okay. So by the time you're going to campus, had you started taking a different path than the one you were brought up in?
Yes, I believe so. At that time. Already I had in my mind, I think I was looking forward to things like, now, dating and, interacting with guys, and just really trying to fit in. For me, it was really trying to fit in, because when I would see now like friends around, for them having, a boyfriend, it was just, it was a casual, it was so casual.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, that's where I began to see that, I'm thinking about these things and not even, thinking twice. I'm like, oh, you know what? It's good to, to have a boyfriend. It's no big issue. Yeah. And things like that. Because when I look back, I see that for me, I didn't even have like the way we see young girls, they have a vision of getting married and things like that. And we usually discuss it with my sister. And I usually ask her, do you remember us even discussing such things? Like, you should, get married and this is the vision. We didn't discuss such things. Yeah.
Wow. So by the time you're getting to campus, did you hook up with a kajama?
Now, for me, interestingly, I didn't hook up with anyone even when I was in campus.
Oh.
But I remember where we used to stay. I started, there's one guy who I saw was interested with me, and I sort of like, we tried to hook up, but not really. But after campus, for me, that's where for me I saw, I made the decisions, because I started working, and at that time I hadn't gotten a job, with what I was studying, and so I was working at one of my auntie's place.
Okay.
And so now there I started to interact with guys, and for me, they were even older guys. Yeah. And so that's where for me now I hooked up, with a guy when I started working.
Okay. So by this time when you started working,
because I was around 20 at that time.
Oh, you were around 20?
Yes.
Wow. So you were still living at home with your parents?
Yes, I was still living at home.
Okay. So how did this affect your life or your decision making?
Okay. For me, I realized that because I didn't understand who I was and what I wanted. Okay. So anything that made me feel comfortable, like, like is like I'm moving forward, anything like that, I was good with it. So even when I started dating now, who the person that I first dated, I can say like a really like serious relationship, who ended up being the father of, my kids, at that time is when now I realize, my God, what have I gotten myself into?
Okay.
After I'm into it so deep, that I realized, I'm telling you, like, I realized I was pregnant, and I'm like, okay, so what is this?
Wow.
That's when I began now to look back and realize, okay, what is happening in my life? And I usually say, when I look back at those years, it's like I was sailing through. It's like it was not me, but it's like I was just sailing through. Because it was not like decisions you say, okay, it was very intentional.
No.
But I found myself in it, and I had to face the consequences.
Okay. I'm just wondering, by the time you recognize you're pregnant, did you talk to your mother? What did she say?
No, I didn't talk to anybody.
Oh.
I didn't talk to anybody until I was like almost a month. I was like 8 months.
And you were living at home?
Oh, yes, and I was living at home.
Wow.
Yes. Pastor James, and for me, I'm tall and I'm big-bodied.
Yes.
So it was not easy to you couldn't detect.
Wow.
And so at 8 months is when now I didn't tell my mother, I didn't tell my sister, I didn't tell my friend, I didn't even tell the father.
What?
No.
Basically, you told no one.
I told no one. Because I don't even know where to start. First of all, I was thinking about my father. Then I'm thinking how I've been brought up. And I'm like, who will I even start telling? And so when I was about 8 months is when I didn't even share it. I didn't even share it with my parents. I shared it with an aunt of mine. And when I shared, she said, what do you mean? And she was like, we have to tell him. And I'm like, even him, we went and told him when we were with my auntie. And you can imagine the shock.
I can imagine. Umekuja na auntie yako kufanya nini? What? So how did he take it?
Pastor James, it began to go downhill from there.
Oh. Did he agree to take responsibility?
Yes, at that time, he did agree.
Okay.
Yes, I'll be very honest, he did agree. And of course, it was a big shock. But so a month later, I had this baby, and who is now my firstborn son.
Yes.
And I was, okay, fine. I had, I was now still coming to terms. You can imagine.
Yeah. Take us back before you even get this baby.
Yes.
How did your mom know? How did she react?
When my mom was told,
Who told her? Your auntie?
Yes, my auntie. And so when we told her, she was, it's like my mom, it's sort of like maybe she had expected it, but of course she was shocked.
Okay.
Because it's like maybe the way you can notice there are some changes.
Yeah.
Because, previously now, prior to this time, my mom had been talking to me because she would see like I would go out and not come back home. The way your parents like talk to you. And I remember, like, for me, because my father is, a disciplinarian,
yes.
strict, so already my father had issues with me, because he was like, I'm telling this girl, and so when my mom found out, it was so shocking for her. But one thing I can say sincerely is that my mother supported me. They did support me. I'll be very honest. They did support me.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
You said from there.
Sometimes people blame them. Sometimes people blame them and say, maybe your support really pushed this girl,
Okay. Okay. You said from that point on, things began going downhill. We'll get into that shortly. This morning, we are hanging out with Sylvia Muthoni. Sylvia is actually a pastor. Sendio?
Yes.
Yes, we are hanging out with Pastor Sylvia Muthoni, sharing her journey with us this wonderful morning. If you have a question for her, or if you know her and you want to say hi, please feel free to do so. 20316 is the SMS line. WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. Motivation Monday. It's all about overcoming the consequences of bad decisions. We're hanging out with Sylvia Muthoni today. Thank you for your messages. I have a message here that says, good morning. This is a wake-up call for parents. We need to speak to our children, be close to them, and continually reinforce Christian values in them. Caution them from trying to fit in My son is also in an international school, and I've just gotten him to listen in, and I've just talked to him. Lately, he's been hanging out with friends. Thank you so much for this talk show. So glad that you are tuned in. And then there's this one. Say hi to Sylvia. You haven't given me your name, and you're asking how old is her son. Maybe she will tell us as we go on with this conversation. What alarms me, Pasi, is that sometimes some children are afraid when they make mistakes, and the last person they want to tell is parents. Are we terrifying our kids too much? I rescued a young intoxicated lady last night after an accident, and she was more concerned about what her mother would say about the car rather than her bruised head. That is just sad. So Sylvia, back to you. So earlier on you mentioned that from this point on, things went downhill. Why is that the case? What happened?
I said that because when I got my son, exactly a year later, I was pregnant again.
Ooh, with the same man?
Yes, with the same man. And I was pregnant again immediately after that. And I'll be very honest. Sometimes when people hear this, they're like, I mean, didn't she think, this would happen again? But there's something that happens when you find yourself in that situation. It's like you're not even thinking anymore. It's like, and that's why I say it's like I was just, riding through or sailing through.
Yeah.
It's like you're saying, Selah, Selah, whatever will be, will be. And so at that time, because of course, I'm trying to now raise this child. Of course, my family members, because for me, even the extended family, I was a person that got a child, when I was still very young. So, now everybody is talking about you. Everyone is discussing. You can imagine, what has Sylvia done? And so now I'm still in relationship with this man. And soon after, I was pregnant again. Okay. And I got my second child.
Yeah.
Now, by this time, you can imagine my parents are so disappointed. My father was really, really disappointed.
Wow.
And even for this second pregnancy, I didn't tell them.
Oh.
Okay. Yes, and so I was taken into, to hospital. It was an emergency, and I'll never forget because it was my father and, both my parents were taking me to hospital, and my dad was so disappointed. And as he was driving me to hospital, he was saying so many things. And at that time, I was going to give birth. My mom just lost, her dad. Oh. And in fact, the day that I got my second born son is the day that, my grandfather was being buried. Yes. So in fact, I was in hospital and they came in the morning and they just saw me and left me. But you can see the disappointment, and already when you see how disappointed people are, you also really begin to hate yourself. Yeah, you begin to say, even you're thinking thoughts of, why am I doing this? Why did this happen again? And even now the gentleman is like, I mean, seriously. Yeah, fine, the first time again. I mean, things like that. But there are consequences. Yeah. And that's what I'd like to tell so many young people.
Okay.
The consequences will be there. And what you feel at that time is it's so much worse than even that trying to fit in and trying to make everyone love you. It's the worst feeling ever.
Wow. So what are some of the consequences that you had to contend with? I'm wondering, by this time, are you still working for your auntie or?
So now at this time, I'm not even working. Now I'm at home because I'm taking care of my kids. But at one point I had to look for a job, and now you settle for any job.
Yeah.
I remember I ended up working for a Muhindi in town, and I would leave my kids. I would have to wake up like very early, like maybe 3 or 4 a.m. so that I can clean and do all those things. Yes, I had to wake up early because like if I'm leaving my sister, I can't just leave her to do everything, to take care of the kids, to clean the house. So I used to wake up very early. And up till today, I'm a person who, I love to, just wake up early. So I used to wake up at around 3:34 so that I can clean my kids' clothes and then leave when I've cooked, cleaned the house, so that when I leave my sister, I'm not leaving her with any responsibility but just to take care of the kids.
Okay.
So there are serious consequences. And then I was working at this place, and after working there for some months, I used to be paid like kidogo kidogo, you know, the way you're paid little by little. And I remember at one time, and I had not been paid, and my parents were wondering, okay, so you're going to work, but what's going on? And I remember one time I asked my boss, you have to pay me. And he said, but I was helping you.
Oh.
So there are so many things that, happen around, such circumstances. And shortly after that, Pastor James, I think after about 2 years, I was pregnant again.
The third child now?
Yes, the third child.
Same man?
No, now this was a different man.
Okay.
And
I'm just trying to imagine, so what is your mom thinking? What is your dad saying?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. It was so disappointing. And now this time it was bad because, I got pregnant. And at this time when I was pregnant, of course I can't have another child. Even I'm looking at my parents and things like that. And I'll not go back so much into this issue, but that child had to be taken away. Because even for me, I was not okay. And you can imagine now having that child, and the child, is taken away, from you. It's also very depressing. Very true. I remember for weeks and months after that, I was crying. But you can't even tell people this is what I'm going through, because people are looking at you like, these are the decisions you've made. You understand? So as much as people want to sympathize with you, they are wondering, these are decisions that you made. Yeah. So people can't really feel you, for lack of a better word. They can't understand what's going on with you. And Pastor James, after that, again, after a few years again, I was pregnant.
Wow.
Yes. I can see the shock.
I'm trying to think about your mom and your dad, and I'm just thinking, okay, I'm trying to imagine I'm your dad, and I'm thinking, is there a problem somewhere we need to talk about?
Thank you. What is going on with you?
Yes.
And I'll say this because some people might be wondering, why was that happening again?
Yeah.
You see, right now, and I like the parent that has said, we need to really talk to our kids and really need to, have a relationship with our kids. Because Pastor James, at that time, for me, I've grown up with, like the real old school parents.
Yeah.
That there are things you never even discuss.
Oh.
Yeah. And yes, I'll be very honest. There are things that you never sit down to discuss. And even those times, it's like when they see you with boys, they just tell you, you better be careful. You better be, you get pregnant. But, not like the way, we sit down with kids, nowadays, because information is out there. Yeah. And if you don't talk to your kids and give them the right information, then they'll get any information from anywhere.
Yeah.
And so at that time, for me, because we were not communicating with my parents to that extent, so I would never even think of things like family planning. You're not even supposed to be engaging in such things. So you see, you're just living life like that.
Yeah.
So there's no one you're discussing with about family planning and things like that, because I know there are people who will ask questions like, really, is she serious?
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, at that time, you don't even have those discussions.
Yes.
So you're just living, and you don't sit down to even someone to tell you, you need to take care of yourself this way. And that's why I advise, is so important, to sit down with your kids and really make them understand, not just tell them, don't do this, but tell them, this will get you into this problem, and this will get you into this issue, and so now I'm able now to really even speak to my kids, just openly and sincerely.
Okay. So I'm just wondering now, baby number 4 is on the way. The third one had to be taken away. How do you deal with this situation? Because, your emotional state and what you're going through, you have to face your parents again. What will people say? What are people thinking? How did you navigate through all that?
So now this time is like, it's like you block yourself. You know, you just block. When that happens, you're not talking to anybody. You know, even my mom, you know, you can see, and I think for me the saddest thing was just seeing the disappointment, you know, in their faces.
Yeah.
You can really see they have you know, really given up on you. And towards the end, I'll tell you something that my dad said later, in the later years. You know, I could really see how disappointed they were. And so this time when I'm pregnant, I really want to like just keep it to myself, do my own thing, you know, just leave it. It's me, you know, and we are not discussing it. And so even to the end of that pregnancy, I went to Muthoni Hospital, and you know, just like the story we saw I think it's some months ago or last year, when we saw a lady giving birth at the gate.
Yeah.
For me, when I got there, yes, I got into the hospital, but as I was admitted, you know, that time the wards were, you know, crowded and everything. But I actually, you know, gave birth alone.
Wow.
With no assistance. Nobody was there to help me. And unfortunately, I lost that baby.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Wow. So that was, it was, you know, you look at it, there's the pain of the loss.
Yeah.
But also, you're also saying, or maybe is it good, because then at least people will not say, I have now 3 children. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're in the situation, but the pain and the loss, you can't deny. You can't deny.
Wow. So did you get any support somebody to walk with you, you know, through that season? Because I can't even begin to imagine your emotional state during that time.
No, I didn't have anyone that I could talk to. It's not like now when we say, you know, you can go talk to a counselor, or just somebody to come and sit down and really say, you know, why is this happening? You know, why is this going on? I think for me, because of the burden and the issues that were there, you had to face life. It was now face life, you know? Yeah. You've made these decisions, you have to, you know, you have to face life. And what people say, face front.
Yeah. Well, what did your parents say when they got the news that the baby had passed on?
Now, at this point in time, especially, you know, for my father, he was not around. Now, he was, but my mom is the one who was there. You know, in fact, it got to a point, my mom was even wondering, what can she tell my dad? Yeah. You know. Because someone will even think at one point, are you encouraging this thing? You know what is going on, you know, and so at that point in time, my mom was there, but they've really given up on me. I'll be very honest. They had really given up on me. Being the firstborn, all hope was lost.
Did this change your relation? Did your journey change your relationship with your siblings?
I think because my sister at that time, my younger brother was at that time was not born. So me and my sister, we were very tight, and up till today we are really tight. Okay. But I could see she pitied me. My sister pitied me. You see, I could see she was looking at me and wondering, and you know, she's my younger sister. She's wondering, what's all this? Yeah. And I could see she really pitied me.
Wow. So how do you move on from that? What happened after that?
So now, years later, just trying to, you know, to make it in life, and it's so important to bring up your children in the way of the Lord, to be very sincere. Yes. Because for me, what happened, I got to a point and I really hit rock bottom. You know, I'm struggling with my kids, and I'm now looking at my peers. I can see people that have moved on, you know, some people we were in church with, people I was in school with. You know, you listen to people, they are now, you know, others are in the media, others are doctors and things like that. And now your life is like a standstill. Yeah. You don't have any plans, you don't even know what next. And so at that point, I'll say, is when I began to seek God. And I'll say, you know, the love of God is amazing, because I was alone, and for me, I just began to reflect and look back.
Yeah.
And when I began to look back, I saw the decisions that I made, because it's a long, so many things went on in between.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, I began to look back, and I began to just, I remember when I was in church, and I'll mention this, when we used to be in church, so many times, I would hear men and women of God, they would tell me, you know what, God has called you for something. There's something about you. There's something about you. And so I began to look back, to some of those things that were spoken in my life. And for me, Pastor James, I rededicated my life to God. I was alone in my room at the lowest of my low, when I felt like I wanted to die. I had given up on everything, and I just told God, you know what, here I am.
Yes.
Here I come, just as I am.
Wow.
And it was just as sincere as it can be. I just said, God, I need you. I can't do this on my own.
Okay. So from that point on, did you begin to see changes in your life?
Yes, I began to realize that, I had really, I didn't value who I was. Okay.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's why anything come, anything go. And from that time, I began to really just soak myself in God. And from that time, I just went back to church, and I went back to serving, just faithfully. But I'll mention this because this is very paramount, Pastor James, that even as I gave my life back to Christ and I started serving, I remember one time someone found me. I used to clean the church.
Yeah. And
someone found me cleaning the church, and they asked me, what are you doing? And I said, what do you do these days? And I said, I do nothing. And for me, I usually tell people, anytime God has given you something to do in the house of God, never look at it as nothing. Because at that time, Pastor James, because we expect that, an 8 to 5 or something, or a business, that's what we consider.
Yeah.
But, even service to God. And at that time, when I said I'm not doing anything, I remember, the person told me, then I can get you a job. And I got a job, Pastor James. And when I got a job, I was really serious with God. I was praying and fasting. But even in that period of that, praying and fasting and just serving God, I met another gentleman. And that's how I got my last born daughter. Again, I was in it again.
Yeah.
But this time, when I was even pregnant with this child, I was very intentional. I knew what God wanted of me. I knew what I needed to do. So even in that time of that pregnancy, I'll say that's when my life changed drastically.
Wow.
Because immediately I got that child, a few months later, I had already begun prayer and small meetings. And after that, I got into Bible school. And my life has never been the same again.
Wow. There's something you mentioned earlier, Sylvia. And I think it's something that if many of us were to be honest with ourselves, it's something that we go through. Some of us overcome it. Some of us battle with it most of our lives. And it's about valuing ourselves. How we see ourselves, how we value ourselves. When you think back to your story, what do you think are things that contributed towards you not valuing yourself?
I think for me, the things that really contributed was because of my family background, and I've told you, my father was a disciplinarian at that time. I think that lack of, that lack of like seeing that love, like, that affection that we see from parents, nowadays, I remember some time back, I was laughing with my friend and he was saying, for me, I grew up and my parents never used to say, I love you and things like that. Okay. But right now is when we've gotten that relationship. We are like best of friends with my father right now, best of friends. And I've looked at my relationship even with my father. When I see how we relate right now, I'm so much confident. I know who I am. I can't just tolerate anything, and things like that. So I believe those are some of the things that when I was growing up, I didn't really experience, and maybe that led to me not valuing myself and having that kind of affirmation. And you can't blame our parents at that time because they knew to do what they knew, and that's what they knew best to do. So I never blame them. You know, I never want to say it's because of them, because there are people who grew up like me and turned out very well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I'll say that those are some of the things when I look even now, I really try to like just affirm my kids and just show them that love, because then when you have that, then they'll not just fall for anything.
Okay. Earlier on, you said there's something your father said that you would tell us. So maybe you can tell us before we run out of time.
I remember when I graduated from my Bible school. Thank you, Pastor James, for reminding me. I remember when I graduated from Bible school, my father gave a speech, and this is what my father said. He said, if you ask my daughter 3 to 5 years ago what she wanted to be, she would not tell you.
Wow.
And he stood there, and when he said that, I looked at my father and I was so emotional. And he said, when I look at her today, I am proud of the person that she is. So you see, for him, he had already now seen, I don't know who I am, I'm useless. And for him to say that if you asked her 2 to 5 years ago what she wanted to be.
Yeah.
So when you ask me that question of what were they thinking, that tells you what my father was seeing in me at that time.
Okay. Sylvia, as we finish, I love your story because a lot of people can derive strength from it, and maybe there's somebody who's listening in today. You know, it's one thing to make a mistake, but it's another thing to go through a series of the same issue over and over and over again. Not many people would have the courage, first of all, to share their story. So thank you for having the courage to come on board and share your story. And not a good number of people would find the courage to arise from that kind of a background and make something out of their life. You know, a lot of people would succumb to just depression and thinking they're good for nothing, and they just disappear somewhere. So what would you tell somebody who's still living their life today based on the mistakes they made yesterday? They're allowing their mistakes yesterday to determine the kind of life they live now. What would you tell them?
I'd want to tell them this. The Bible says in Philippians, and I'll say this, that let our sufferings and trials, okay, mold us to the likeness and the image of God. Don't allow what you have gone through or the mistakes that you have made define your tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's a decision that you just make, and not by your own strength, but by the grace and the mercies of God.
Yes.
And there's a scripture that is my favorite in Romans chapter 8. For those he predestined, he foreknew. I love that scripture. And he says, and he justified them.
Yeah.
That's like, you know, he knew it, and he knew these things you are going through, but yet still he loved you and he ordained you for greater.
Wow.
And don't worry about what people you say. It's true. Yes. Sharing such a story. My aunties, I remember one time my mom's sisters, they sat me down and they were like, you know, you're taking our sister through so much.
Wow.
But let me tell you, yes, because they could see the pain that my mom had.
Yeah.
But if you allow those decisions that you made and circumstances define even your today, then it will destroy you. But for me, I encourage somebody, just arise, no matter, and own those mistakes and say, you know, this is something these are the decisions that I made. But once you begin to just make a turnaround, even from today, your life turns around completely. It's true. Yes, it does.
Wow. There's a message here that says, that's a heart-touching encounter. Someone is learning from this. Personally, I congratulate you. You never quit. And that's what's important. Most people would say that it's for them. God bless your kids and you as well. Well, Sylvia, I'm out of time, but thank you for the courage. Thank you for sharing your life with us today. I believe somebody has been blessed. You know, somebody once told me that as long as you're still alive, it means that God is not done with you yet. And I'm so blessed to see that God is using you to be a blessing to others and to bring others into his kingdom. So, asante sana.
Thank you so much, Pastor James. I've enjoyed and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Awesome. Tuma salamu kabla nifunge kipindi.
Wacha nitumeko salamu.
Yes.
And first, just want to say hi to my dad. I know my dad is watching, and my mom. I love them so much. My friends, my sister who has supported me all through. Yes, I just want to say hello to them. And I want to say hello to the Beautiful Ashes family where I serve as pastor. I just want to say hi to all of them. And I love them so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm out of time for today. I hope you've grasped something from Sylvia's story. Yes, we all have baggage. We all have mistakes we have made, my friend. But it doesn't mean that you're good for nothing. I love what she has shared. Learn to value yourself. Learn to value yourself and allow God to use you to fulfill what He called you to do. That's all the time I have for Motivation Monday today.
For this and more of our shows, log on to www.familymediaonline.com to enjoy a wide variety of programs from current affairs to testimonials and features, pastoral and inspirational shows, kids entertainment, and so much more. Also stream live on www.familymedia.tv.